Hi everyone, my name's Hazel and I'm an author and a PhD student, and today I'm going to be talking about what makes a good fanfiction and how to write a good fanfiction. So I've made a couple of videos on fanfiction already and I will link them down below and put them in the cards throughout the video. And I absolutely love fanfiction, which apparently is kind of rare for a published author to like. I feel like a lot of published writers, whether they're novelists, poets, screenwriters, whatever it is, tend to look down on people who write fanfiction. I don't share that view. I think fanfiction is an amazing thing, and someone on one of my other fanfiction videos called me a fanfiction instigator. So I'm going to take that, I'm going to roll with it, and I'm going to try and instigate you all some more to write some fanfiction because it's great, and I think it's a great way to practice, to hone your ability and skill as a writer if you want to go on and become a published writer. But if you don't, that's fine. You don't have to want to become a published author if you write fanfiction. It can just be for fun. But I just love fanfiction so much, I wanted to do another video on it. So my background to writing, if you're wondering how qualified I am to do this video, I have been reading fanfiction for about 11 years now and writing it for 10 years. I started when I was 14 and I turned 24 last week actually. It was my 24th birthday. I had great fun. Finally got my hair cut. As you can see, it's usually down past the camera, but it's up now. But now it's been cut and my fringe has been put back in. It's great. And I got a metric ton of makeup, which I also made a video on because I want to start doing that, which is great. So I started off in high school with Harry Potter fanfiction, then started to progress to fanfiction that was more about anime, and now I write about loads of different things, including my one and only love, Miraculous Ladybug, which is a show written for like 8-year-olds, and I'm 24. It's a really good show though, you should watch it. So yeah, I've been writing fanfiction for a long time. I actually read more fanfiction than actual books, which at the minute is also still true with my PhD. I don't have a lot of time to read physical books unless they offer my PhD. I haven't read a for leisure book just because I wanted to since last September, so it's been a year since I've actually read a book for pleasure. I do enjoy quite a lot of the books I read for my PhD, but if I saw them I would be like, oh yeah, I want to read that. So right now reading fanfiction is filling my need to read something other than about mental health in Asia. So I also have a degree in creative writing, a master's in creative writing, a master's in script writing. My PhD is partly in creative writing, literature, mental health and Asia Pacific studies. And I also have a published novel. The link to it will be down below if you want to go and check it out. It's a young adult science fiction romance novel set in London in 2047 about a girl who hears voices and she falls in love with one of them. So those are my qualifications. But I don't think you need qualifications to be a writer. It's not like being a doctor. I'd be worried if I went to the hospital for an operation, the surgeon came to speak to me before, and he was like, yeah, I've actually had no medical training. I would be worried, I'd be very worried, something like that. However, with writing, it's a lot more subjective. I don't think you need training. I actually don't think you should study creative writing at university, which I also did a video on. The best advice I can give you for any kind of writing is just to write, just to practice. But with that being said, I guess let's get started. So if you've watched any of my other writing videos, I always pretty much start with the point. You need to pick between whether it's going to be character driven or plot driven, which is fairly self-explanatory. In a character driven narrative, the characters are driving the narrative forward, whereas in a plot driven narrative, the plot is driving the narrative forward with some help from the characters. I have always favoured a plot-driven narrative. There are very few character-driven narratives. I love plot. That's what I'm here for. When I go into something, if I don't like the characters, if the plot is good enough, I will stay for the plot regardless of the characters. For example, Twilight. I despise pretty much everyone in Twilight apart from Alice, Esme, and whatever the vampire dad's called. I want to say he's called Carl, but I don't think that's right. It's been a while since I've watched it, but I will stay for the plot because I do quite like the plot of Twilight. I just hate everybody in it. However, with fanfiction, it's less so character driven versus plot driven rather than relationship driven versus plot driven. And then there isn't really much competition between them, since I would say about 95% of all fanfictions I've ever come across, whether I've read them or not, are relationship driven. There are very few where it's just about the characters, like a character study, or where it solely relies on plot. Most people aren't there for it. A lot of people, I feel, do use fanfiction, especially when it first started, use fanfiction is used to usually explore something like a different ending or some other sort of canon divergence. So let's use Twilight again. Let's say you absolutely hate Edward, and let's be real, I'm with you, I also hate Edward, and for some reason you really like Jacob. I don't like Jacob, to be honest. And you want Bella to get with Jacob instead, so that's your canon divergence. You write about that pairing instead of Edward and Bella to see how that will affect the plot of the rest of Twilight. Obviously that canon divergence is based upon a relationship, which is usually what canon divergences are based on. So I'm trying not to mention Harry Potter loads because of what's going on with J.K. Rowling, but when I first started writing fanfiction, I was writing Hermione fanfiction, and I was essentially reading and writing to see what would happen if Draco and Hermione got together at critical points in the book, like how things would have changed between the dynamics between characters and the general plot of the overall Harry Potter story. And there is nothing wrong if you want to write a fanfiction that's more like a character study, or one that is entirely canon divergence with no relationship canon divergence. That is fine. However, if you want, you shouldn't just do this to get popularity, but a reason why a lot of people write fanfiction is to get some recognition for their writing and to make connections with people online, even if it's only a brief connection in like a comment thread on Archive of Our Own. It's just to make a connection with people who are interested in the same things as you. I know even now, I was about to say when I was growing up, but even now, so I write fanfiction for Miraculous Ladybug. I only know really 2 people in my life who like it. None of my family like it, and it kind of makes me feel really isolated in my interests because I have very few people who will talk to me about it. So I write fanfiction, first of all to practice writing, but second of all to connect with more people who like the same things I do, because the people currently around me, because obviously lockdown, I'm staying at home, but the interests I have, pretty much none of my family share them. I like K-pop, they all despise K-pop. I like anime, they all despise anime. So I guess for my fanfiction I do tend to write things that will be more popular, so I stick with relationship based things because more people will read it, more people will comment, so I have more people to talk to about the things I like when I don't have anyone else to talk to them about. So that's the reason I do it, but if you're not bothered about that, then I will say by all means go and write something that's more character driven or plot driven. The fanfictions I usually write, and the ones I like to read the best, have both relationship, like a getting together fic, as well as plots that is part of canon divergence. But even then, it does seem like fanfiction is kind of a cross between do you do cute or do you do serious? And a lot of fanfictions, mine included, are usually a mix of both. I have a lot of cute moments between the pairings I've chosen to do, along with more serious plot stuff, because like I said, I like both. I actually think in my writing, which is probably something really bad to admit, but plot is probably something I do kind of struggle with in terms of, first of all, coming up with a good plot. I've gotten a lot better at it, but coming up with a good plot, that's not to say the plot in my book isn't good, my plot in that is really good, but I spent ages planning it, so. And also maintaining the plot. So over the years, like I said, I've been writing fanfiction for 10 years and getting better at it. Like, I don't think you can ever be a perfect writer. You will continually improve the more you practice, which I'm really happy about. I can see if I go back and read like my first ever fanfiction. Not that I was a bad writer then, but how much I've improved since then. This is really embarrassing. So I now post my fanfiction on AO3, but I started on fanfiction.net, and I was just having to scroll through, clicked on a story, started reading it. I was like, this is awful, this is terrible, who on earth has written this fanfiction? Scroll to the top. Me. I'd written it, so I can't even recognise my own writing from when I was like 14, 15, now 10 years later. So it shows me that, you know, I'm doing something right by writing every day. That's another really good reason for fanfiction. And also the plot of the fanfiction can literally just be about these 2 people getting together. That's a fine plot. That's okay. If that's what you want to do, if you just want to write about cute relationships because your favourite pairing didn't get together in the show, that's completely fine. At the minute I'm watching Criminal Minds with my mum, and I already know they don't get together, but Morgan and Reed I absolutely love to bits. And I read a fanfiction last night. It was really short, only about 6 chapters long. I read it all in one go, and the entire plot was just about them getting together. It was really sweet and cute. You definitely don't have to have something big and serious. Fanfiction does seem to be a great place to practice relationship dynamics rather than plot, but that's not to say you can't practice plot as well. The only thing that really annoys me, and I've noticed it a lot with the Morgan and Reed fanfictions I've been reading, is people struggle to keep the characters in character. And I understand in Criminal Minds, if you don't know, Reed, he's a doctor with 3 PhDs, he has an IQ of 187, he's a genius, so pressing off random facts in the middle of fanfiction is kind of harder to write, but when he doesn't do it, or doesn't even speak in the same way he does in the show, it does really come off as ingenuous. It doesn't sound at all like him. However, I can look past that because I really want to read the fanfiction. You know, I like the pairing, the sound of the idea of the fanfiction is also really interesting to me, but sometimes it is kind of jarring. So fanfiction can also help you with keeping people in character, and it might help you to pick a more eccentric pairing to help you practice something like Morgan and Reed, because if you don't watch Criminal Minds, they are very, very different people. They act very differently, they talk very differently, they talk about very different things from each other, they've had different experiences in life. They're both really good characters. So if you struggle with it in your own writing, maybe writing fanfiction can help you because you already have the character created for you. That's a really good thing as well. I mentioned it in my video why you should write fanfiction, but the characters, the plot, the relationship is already there for you to take and use how you want to help you with just the writing, instead of focusing on things like characterization, relationship dynamics, plot progression. You can just focus on the writing itself and how it sounds. But it is kind of jarring sometimes if you can't keep the characters in character. If you're going to change them in some way, so they're not the same as in the book or the show or whatever, I do feel like you kind of need to justify it. But I do feel like the best written fanfictions are the ones that can keep the characters in character. The next thing I'm going to touch on how to write a good fanfiction is about planning. Now, I'm an advocate for planning when you write, for planning novels, for planning whatever it is, and I am not an advocate for planning for fanfiction. No, I'm not an advocate for that. I have really extensively planned fanfictions in the past. Last summer I actually spent 2 entire months planning out a fanfiction, and I'm in the process of planning out another fanfiction that I'm not planning to finish the plan of until Christmas. It's September, I'm not planning to finish until Christmas. It's gonna take me like 4 or 5 months to finish this plan. I take my fanfiction very seriously, and it can help if you, like me, need some help with plot. That's why I plan them out like that. However, I have written a few fanfictions before that were completely spontaneous, where I literally had the idea one day, like on the train coming home from uni or work, and I was just like, I have to write this now, and I have to upload it immediately. I don't care if it's going to be a one-shot, which just means 1 chapter, or if it's going to become like a 50-chapter long story. I have to write this right now. And sometimes I do think when you don't plan, it can come off as more spontaneous, which is why actually when I was younger I hated planning my writing. I never did, I just go for it, and it ended up a complete mess, so that's why I plan now. But with fanfiction, I don't think it's as important to plan, unless you're planning on doing like mammoth fanfictions like I write. I don't think you need to do it, not gonna lie. Like, it might help you get into practice, like I said, if you want to become a published author, it might help you get into practice of you planning out a fanfiction. But if you don't want to become an author and you don't like planning, I don't think you need to do it. The fanfiction, yeah, may be better because this is about how to write a good fanfiction. So a plan could help make it better, but not necessarily, because sometimes I think it's great if you're getting a lot of comments on the work to ask them what they want to see, ask your readers what they want, because you're writing it partly for you but also for them as well. So ask them what they want to see, but if you've got a really rigid plan, you can't really insert that. So whilst I have a big plan of what I want to do, the overarching plot, I actually kind of keep the relationship that I'm developing in it not as structured. Like, I kind of know what chapter they're going to get together, I know where the big milestones in the relationship are going to lie, but I do kind of leave some wiggle room. If one of my readers is desperate for something to happen, I can make it happen, you know? There's still enough room for me to make it happen, to make my readers happy. And not that you should do things to make your readers happy, but like I said, I do partly write fanfiction in order to connect with other people. So I think you know yourself when you get the idea for a fanfiction whether you need to plan it. So it's up to your discretion, because sometimes a good fanfiction can be really spontaneous, but other times a good fanfiction can also be really well planned out. So It's really up to your discretion, and you know yourself the best as a writer. How do you work the best? I work the best with a plan. You may work the best without a plan. The other thing I think that makes a good fanfiction is a cliffhanger. So when you're reading a traditional novel, when you get to a cliffhanger, let's say in chapter 15 and there are 30 chapters, you can immediately read the next chapter to find out what this is about. With a fanfiction you can't always do that. If it's not finished or the next chapter hasn't been updated, you can't always do that. And sometimes writing, maybe not every chapter, but writing the end of some chapters to a cliffhanger is a really good skill to have. So for example, there is a television show in England, I don't personally watch it, so we have these things called soaps, and I think there are other countries with soaps but they're not quite the same, they don't seem to be very popular in other countries. But we have what I would call the three main ones. So there's EastEnders, Coronation Street and Emmerdale. The entire episode is essentially writing up to the cliffhanger at the end of the half-an-hour long show. And in one of them, EastEnders, I don't watch that one, my soap of choice is Coronation Street if you're wondering. I love curry. In EastEnders, every single episode ends with these drums and then the end theme of the show. Because every single episode leads up to these inevitable drums that it's like the dun dun dun, the next part is gonna like blow your mind sort of thing. I mean, I've never seen EastEnders, so I don't actually know if it does blow your mind when whatever is revealed the next episode. But sometimes if you want to get better at writing something like suspense, leaving your readers hanging at the end of a chapter can be really good, especially for me. Like my first novel ends on a cliffhanger, a pretty big cliffhanger, and my second novel, the sequel to it, which isn't out yet, ends on an even bigger cliffhanger. So fanfiction has been invaluable for me in order to help me be able to do that. So honestly I would say about half of the chapters in any of my fanfictions all end on a cliffhanger. But I mean honestly I think fanfiction is just fun. I wouldn't take it too seriously. Even if you do want to be a published author, yeah, it's a great place to practice and experiment with ideas. Me personally, I don't do this so much anymore, but I used to take an idea I wanted to do in a novel, change it slightly and put it in a fanfiction to see how people reacted to it, so I could experiment with it and try it out on my readers. So yeah, writing fanfiction can really help with your writing, but if you don't want to take it too seriously, you just want to do it for fun, then do it. As much as I probably do take fanfiction a bit more seriously than the average fanfiction reader or writer, I also find it incredibly fun. I absolutely love it. I have done since the moment I found out what it was when I was like 13, 14. I love it. And if you're not up to writing fanfiction yet, you're still feeling a bit nervous, because it can be a bit nerve-wracking, you don't want to get hate comments, I completely understand. I would for now just kind of read as much of it as you can. Another thing that makes a writer better is how much they read, not just write. And I think Archive of Our Own, or AO3 as it's otherwise known as, which in my opinion is the superior fanfiction posting website. You can fight me on this if you're a fanfiction.net stan, but I'm an AO3 stan, you can't change my mind. But the tagging system is great with being able to filter things in and out of things you do want, things you don't want, and making sure people are safe and not triggering people. I think it's a great place to start for you, first of all, to get familiar with the user interface and the platform in general, and also just like the culture kind of around fanfiction. It's not really a big culture, and kind of the culture changes depending on which fandom you read for or write for. But yeah, it's just fun. So I think that was everything. That was me, your fanfiction instigator. But seriously, I do love fanfiction, and I wish more published authors or like professional writers. Am I classed as a professional writer now? I guess I am. That's scary. Anyway, I wish people didn't make so much fun of it, and I will talk about how great I think fanfiction is until the day I die. I think it is the best. It is the bee's knees caps. It's the best. So please leave down below any suggestions you have, any more tips on what you think makes a good fanfiction, because this was just in my opinion. Writing is subjective, fanfiction is subjective. There will be different opinions on what people think makes a good story, what people think makes a good fanfiction, what people think is a good way to write a relationship. But anyway, that was the video. That was me, Hayes, your friendly fanfiction instigator, and I will see you all next time. Bye!